Hello and welcome to the presentation on Mozart's Magic Flute. One of his most popular operas, certainly one of his most charming. It has some of his most wonderful music in it. In 1790, Joseph II, the emperor of the Austrian Empire, died. He was a particular fan of opera buffa, but his brother Leopold, who Mozart wrote an opera, Syria, La Clemenza di Tito, for his coronation as King of Bavaria, was not a fan of opera buffa. So Mozart was looking to other venues for writing opera. So he turned back to Singspiel. His last important Singspiel was 1791, the Abduction from the Seraglio, written for the Burgtheater. But as I said, the court favored opera buffa instead of Singspiels. So Mozart went out of the court to a public theater. Now, German opera is different simply than opera written in Italian, and not just because of its language. The composers that write in German choose a different set of stories. They feature elements that they know that the German-speaking audiences want. And in general, those audiences are lower class than, not low class, but they're from the middle class. They're not the courtiers at the imperial court. And so just the change of language itself changes the social context. So think of this as a big introduction to German opera, and you're going to find traits here in Magic Flute that are common to a lot of the operas that we're going to be studying in this unit. Especially that in the early going, you see a lot of fairy tales and the supernatural. You see it right here at the very first minute of the Magic Flute when the Tambinos are confronted by this dragon. It's a natural setting, natural characters, people like Papageno. So nature is not only just a setting, but it also is a force. The stories have an overwhelming tendency to be moralizing in a way that's even more explicit than the allegories that we found in Italian opera seria. And the major things you'll see in German operas is far more prominent use of the orchestra. The orchestra plays a dramatic role, in fact. This is the case to a certain degree in Magic Flute, but not to the extent that it's going to become over the next few years in Germany. So, important background, kind of social cultural background to the Magic Flute, and that's Freemasonry. Mozart was a Freemason, so was the librettist, Emanuel Schikaneder. And it's the ideas of Freemasonry play an important role in the Magic Flute. Essentially, they're enlightened ideals. But there's some evidence that suggests that the story is a more explicit allegory. It's not just raising up enlightened ideals, but it's also sharply critiquing another mindset, kind of a backward-looking mindset, one that's associated with the previous Emperor Maria Theresa, the mother of Joseph II, who persecuted the Masons. You may have caught some information about the Freemasons from various pulp fiction. They're a common culprit, or in fiction at least, as some conspirators in the background. Most of that is just someone's imagination. You should learn a little more about Freemasonry. You can zoom in and read this little side panel here. Many of them may know that many American founding fathers were Freemasons, so it's not nearly as radical a group as it's often portrayed. Now, more about Emanuel Schikaneder, the man who wrote the libretto, or at least put together the libretto from different sources. He ran the theater. He was a friend of Mozart's. So it's a very different context. This is a money-making endeavor. Um, the theater is not even, they wrote it for, was not even inside the city limits of Vienna. It's just outside of Vienna. Schikaneder was an impresario and also an actor. He played the role of Papageno. In fact, he created the role just for himself. He cobbled the libretto together using an existing libretto by another Freemason, Carl Ludwig Giesecke, who his Singspiel Oberon was done just a couple of years earlier by the same troupe that the Schikaneder's same troupe. So, exactly what is the story of the Magic Flute? Because it's kind of cobbled together from a lot of different elements. And frankly, it seems that way as you're watching. So, some things to keep in mind. One is the number 3. It's you see 3 ladies, 3 spirits. These characters otherwise don't have names. They function collectively. And then that's not explained who they are, where they come from, and what they're doing. We know the 3 ladies are associated with the Queen of the Night. We know the 3 spirits, we don't really know who they're associated with. They're introduced by the 3 ladies, but they seem to really be outside of the drama and just step in as protagonists, step in to guide the protagonist. Another important 3 is the 3 temples that Tamino encounters when he first arrives at Sarastro's realm: prudence, labor, and art. These names are allegorical, and the final one, art, is significant. They signal the larger path that Tamino is on. That helps us kind of gauge where we're going in the story. So it starts off, we think, it must be a hero quest. You see a hero and a dragon on stage at the beginning, but that is undercut quite quickly when we find out that Tamino is cowering and running away from this dragon, and that these 3 ladies suddenly appear and just instantly kill the dragon. So this says quite a bit in just the first minute of the opera about just the extent to which individuals can control their destiny, because Tamino is not controlling anything. He is helpless, and the people that did do something do so magically. Nature. Papageno is the most obvious figure from influenced by nature. He's a nature boy. He actually comes from a tradition in German informal theater called the Hans Wurst tradition, featuring a kind of a popular, coarse characters, sort of a buffoon, but also is kind of has a jester quality. Papageno is sort of the German equivalent of the Harlequin from the Italian Commedia dell'arte, but his personal qualities, are very different. He's an innocent, natural figure. Another interesting is the pairing of Papageno and his bride-to-be, Papagena. This pairing of names is interesting. It was implied already in Tamino and Tamina, in Giesecke's earlier opera. Now Pamina's name's been changed so that it begins with a P, but still these couples are essentially complements to one another. They're meant to be. There's no formal courtship. They just, their names say it all. They belong together. And also this idea of pairing sets of couples, kind of a lower class or a simple pair, Papageno, Papagena, and then the more noble pair, Tamino, Pamina. That's quite common in German opera. You see it some in Italian, but you really see it a lot in German opera. So, is this a damsel in distress story? Listening to the Queen of the Night's first aria, you might think so. She explains that her daughter has been kidnapped and she's poor woman in need of Tamino's courage to go and rescue her. So she sends him off, and he is, having seen the portrait of her daughter, is entirely willing to go. Now, it turns out that it's not quite the way things are. Tamino hasn't really been kidnapped, and Sarastro is not evil. The Queen of the Night's music is about as different as it could possibly be from Papageno's simple strophic songs. Her music is right out of opera seria. In fact, her character is right out of opera seria. But because her character is so untrustworthy, and in fact is, as we come to find out, is positively evil, then this is a subtle, or a really not so subtle way of Mozart to critique opera seria style. So when she's being emotionally manipulative when she sings her cantabile aria, and when she pulls out the vocal fireworks, she's dazzling Tamino to mislead him. And then in the second act, it gets worse. She becomes murderously vindictive. So the Queen of the Night points to a general duality in this opera, and we'll see in many German operas. That is darkness and light. The story, being a morality story, tends to devolve into a battle between good and evil. And Mozart uses dark imagery to dramatize the evil. So what the dark imagery implies things. The characters that are dark, the Queen of the Night, it's not. Sarastro is associated with the day. The character of Monostatos, a Moor, his skin is dark. He is cruel and even attempts to rape Pamina. Emotional, irrational, vindictive. All of that is pitted against the other side, the light. Just the name enlightenment, reason. Sarastro's qualities of level-headedness and forgiving, being forgiven. And of course, you can't ignore that the dark is, at least in this opera, is associated with a woman. And her minions, the three ladies, of course, are women. Sarastro is, of course, male. His community of priests are all male. There are women that do belong to that community, but none of them have any singing roles. So it's difficult to ignore the demonization of women and dark-skinned peoples in this opera. So, is this a rescue opera? As we'll find out when we study Beethoven's Fidelio, rescue opera is an important genre, and Abduction from Australia was a rescue opera. This seems to be pointing in the direction of a rescue opera. Tamino is going to rescue Pamina. Not so fast. When he arrives at the temple, he encounters not an evil fiend, but this very soft-spoken speaker. So I'm going to leave it off right there. This is an important turning point, and come back and give a little second commentary on what Magic Flute transforms into.